Every year since 1989, the Library of Congress has selected 25 films to add to the National Film Registry. The criteria? The films must be culturally, historically, or aesthetically significant.
Each week on You're Missing Out, we take a look at one of these films to try and get to the heart of why they were selected and why they still matter.
This week, Dr. Vaughn Joy joins the show to talk about Yankee Doodle Dandy. Our guest today is a cultural historian of mid-century Hollywood, propaganda, and Christmas films. Her new book, Selling Out Santa, Hollywood Christmas Films in the Age of McCarthy, is out now. Dr. Vaughn Joy joins us on the show to talk. I did not anticipate, I will say, Dr. Vaughn Joy joins is a bit of a tongue twister there. That does feel like something one of those vaudeville people would have done to warm up before a show. So keep that in mind if vaudeville comes back. Dr. Vaughn Joy joins us on the show to talk about Yankee Doodle Dandy. Thank you so much for joining us on the program.
Thank you so much for having me.
I guess it would be more fitting to say, my father thanks you, my mother thanks you, my sister thanks you, and I thank you in this particular context, which is a line from this film remembered by me and the many 80-year-olds I know who also enjoy it. It is such a fascinating one to talk about. And that's not me being dismissive of the film per se, because I grew up loving this movie, but it is one of those interesting films that occupies this place of, if you I was talking to my grandmother recently, and she's in her 90s, and she was like, I loved that movie. And I talked to my dad about it, and he goes, I liked that movie. My dad had it on all the time. And I went on Letterboxd earlier and saw a bunch of people a little younger than me going, so I didn't know about this movie until it was on the AFI 100 list, and I found it, and so on. So I do think it's an interesting movie that kind of occupies this very specific space, right? This very specific point in time. What is your, Dr. Joy, what's your kind of familiarity with Yankee Doodle Dandy? Because I know this is one we sort of threw at you. You sent us over the list of, here are all the movies I'm talking about in my book, and I went, we are not covering any of those this season. So, yeah.
So I'll admit it's just a film that I had read about. I had just seen it peripherally in my other film studies. So I wasn't really too familiar with it until I watched it and loved it. What a fascinating piece of Americana, right? That showcases so many other fascinating pieces of Americana. And I love what you were saying about young people finding it now, because it really is this, the premise of the film is a glimpse of 60 years of entertainment development in America, and how vaudeville goes from traveling shows to staged, more settled shows to all of these different iterations of entertainments, and building up Broadway, and eventually to film that's kind of mocked in the film. And we have these beautiful kind of historical set pieces that are literally set pieces as we're going through the stages of George M. Cohan's career, that are featured in this film, that ends with FDR talking about how important culture is to America, to American ideals and values and culture. And now it's getting another life with people discovering it again almost a century later. What a cool thing. I guess 80 years later,
but it also, in a way, and I think I mentioned this when we were emailing, it does, in a sense, tie into the subject matter you cover in your book, not about the Age of McCarthy, but talking about propaganda and all of that, because this film, I think when I do see younger people kind of logging, I say younger people, I'm not 50. I don't know why I keep doing this to myself, but when I see younger people logging this, and they're just some of them who just don't get it at all, and they're like, I don't understand. Why do I have to care about this guy? Why do I whatever? And it's like, well, because what this movie really was Hollywood and FDR going, hey, it was good when we liked America. Please like America. Please be okay with going to war. Woodrow Wilson was fine. Stop being mad at him, which was like FDR's modus operandi, which is why he also 2 years later props up 1944's Wilson, which Dr. Joy, have you ever seen 1944's Wilson?
I have not.
Okay. Do you have trouble sleeping?
Because not at the moment.
I have a recommendation for you if that's the case. It's a movie that you hear when FDR screened it at the White House halfway through. Winston Churchill got up and went to bed, and you get about halfway through that one and go, I get it, buddy, I get it. But it's like you see this kind of arc of like Yankee Doodle Dandy is such a crucial part of like it's so very much like, hey, again, remember when we were cool with sending our boys off to Europe, and remember when we liked the flag and we felt pride in this country. This music made us proud of America. We're maybe not super thrilled about how it went the last decade or so, but let's maybe try, like it's a feature-length version of Happy Days Are Here Again, the FDR song. So that was kind of my thinking when you were talking about the book, but I'd love if before we get more into the film, if you could kind of talk to the listener, the viewer about your book, and maybe they'll understand why I say it ties in, so I don't just sound like I'm rambling.
No, of course. And I think you're 100% right. I think there are a lot of maybe not content parallels between Yankee Doodle Dandy and the films in my book, which are Christmas films from 1946 to 1961. There aren't necessarily a lot of similarities there, except for the obvious kind of direct one, which is Frank Capra's It's a Wonderful Life in 1946. That and the Yankee Doodle Dandy really occupy the very same space of Americana, and as you say, like coming out of national tragedy and trying to pick up an American spirit again after so many kind of trying times in the early 20th century. So that being said, I do think that there are other kind of thematic similarities between the films in my study and this one, in that they're about the importance of culture and building a sense of American identity and a national identity for people to really embrace and get behind in this post-war, early Cold War moment. And in my study, in the book, I'm, as I say, looking at those Christmas films from 46 to 61, which cover It's a Wonderful Life and Miracle on 34th Street, The Bishop's Wife, both from 47, Holiday Affair from 1949. You have Bob Hope, the Lemon Drop Kid from 1951. And of course, another Michael Curtis film, White Christmas from 1954, that again is also really in conversation with some of the themes in Yankee Doodle Dandy, but even more so with his film from the following year, This is the Army. A lot of parallels between those two. And then it goes through to 1961 and covers The Apartment and Babes in Toyland, Pocket Full of Miracles, which is Capra's last film. And it talks about what's changing in this period. And as you guys have definitely talked about here, that mid-century moment, the post-war, early Cold War, is really tumultuous for Hollywood. You have HUAC coming in, the House Committee on Un-American Activities. You have anti-communism kind of rife in the country. And SCOTUS hands down a decision to issue the Paramount decrees and break up the studio system. So what my book does is kind of catalog all of those problems that Hollywood is facing and look at the reactions within the industry. What did Eric Johnston do in 47 in response to the HUAC hearings? Spoiler, it's the blacklist. How does the blacklist then affect culture? And it uses this case study on Christmas because Christmas is fun and joyous and not as scary as all of the things that I just said. And we can look at this truly unique American genre of Christmas films that capture so much about the values and ideals of America in that holiday and its tropes and all of its tinsel kind of wrapping, and looks at how government influence on the motion picture industry in this post-war period changes what Christmas means and therefore what social ideas about America mean. And it gets a lot more socially conservative. And these are things that we should be aware of, how that ekes into how that propaganda ekes into our entertainment.
So one thing I was wondering when you were telling us about this before was so from your perspective, when you were forming this and when you were working on this, did it start from I want to focus on like mid-century Hollywood propaganda, and then you kind of found the prism of the Christmas film, or were you thinking about Christmas films and kind of noticed this pattern within that? Where was the kind of starting point for you?
So that's a great question. I was not a film person until my PhD, which is, that reaction. It's kind of surprising. And it was surprising to me because I was like, I'll do movies now. And I did not know what I was getting into. I studied popular culture in a lot of different ways. I used to be a classicist, actually, and I studied ancient Greece and ancient Rome and literature and mythology and those cultures. And then I went to post-war comic books, actually. I studied a comic book named Venus for a master's, and that was really interesting. And I've always been really obsessed with the post-war period just from hearing my great-grandparents talk about it as a kid. So I was like, this will be fun. And I genuinely did not know that there were all these problems in Hollywood in the post-war period. But I was interested in the idea of like building an American identity in the post-war period because it's such a pivotal point for what we think of as the American dream and who is the ideal American. A lot of that mythology is kind of rewritten and reformed in the post-war period. So it started with that interest, and then I just struck gold. Yeah.
And and it is we've talked about it on our show a couple times, but it is fascinating because as I've said to people, you would almost feel like there's not more to learn, right? You would almost feel like with with mid-century America, where you'd be like, well, of course we know all the facts, right? But as I've mentioned, anytime we've had to talk about the blacklist or anything like that, it's like up until the collapse of the Soviet Union, we had mostly formed our narrative of like what the Red Scare was and what all of that was, and then all of a sudden, like they declassified the Venona Project, and we suddenly go, wait, what?
Yeah.
What? Oh. Yeah. Oh boy. Okay, this is complicated now. Well, we destroyed a lot of lives.
Like a lot.
But we really like it is this odd thing where it's like, and again, we talked about it, or we will talk about it. Folks will hear it later in point of order about like the ultimate lesson of McCarthyism is like he made it so much about his own ego and his own kind of vanity that it wasn't like he just was on a witch hunt over. It was like he destroyed all conversation around communism in America or anything like that across the board, right? He made it so that you basically couldn't trust anybody on this, right? It basically just took this entire thing and made it like, well, now everybody's just saying whatever to score political points, or now everybody's, yeah.
Yeah, and that's a lasting legacy.
I may have to check in case I get in trouble with my day job, but I definitely name a contemporary Senator McCarthy on that episode. I definitely name drop someone that I go, he's like that guy now. I mean, we'll see if I get
that
in
guy now could be like 20 plus people.
Yeah. It's not great. Yeah. Yes. I mean, the biggest difference, I think, between the time you're talking about in your study and now is we just don't make as many Christmas movies. It's really kind of what it narrows down to.
Or we make.
I don't think you're watching Hallmark, man.
Hallmark. Yes,
Hallmark.
I'm sorry. Theatrically released Christmas films that are not mostly funded by four walling theaters for church groups.
For sure. Yes. I read about that in my book.
if you narrow
do you
it
really?
that,
Yeah.
if you narrow it down that much, then yeah, of course not.
There's always that whenever you look at the box office, like you're going like, number 3, what the hell is A Promise Kept? And you're like, oh, this is a thing that like is solely viewed by church groups busing it into a multiplex.
They were just bussing in immobile Catholic grandmas.
And I can't tell you
before,
the number of times I've
Cuomo
thought,
gets to them, they show them a Christmas movie.
I've always thought, like, should I just go to one of these? Like, I did truly almost see the animated Charles Dickens Jesus movie. I thought about it. I was so... did you see that?
I didn't, but I'm curious about it.
Oscar Isaac as the voice of Jesus. There's a little cat buddy.
Right?
Right.
You do refer to yourself almost as if you are an 80-year-old man. You might as well at this point.
Yeah, 100%.
Just fully... I mean, I saw one... I don't even remember the name, but just me... They played a trailer in front of a movie the other day, and my friend Mike's just like, what the hell is this? I'm like, it's the Christians, man. I don't know.
It's that odd niche of like what... but you're right, Tom, by the way. You're saying, I mean, to bring us back to our main subject, you're saying I'm basically an 80-year-old man. I will fully admit I was walking around the house all day singing songs from this movie as though they were the songs of my childhood. Songs that no one has thought about in 50 years. Guaranteed.
Minimum, yeah.
Like Yankee Doodle Dandy, people still know. I think that's still at least known enough. But it's like when you go to New York City and you see that statue of George M. Cohan, right? Why are you laughing? Like I'm saying,
No. It's my stupid. Like, what do you think George M. Cohan would think of WAP?
It would be like the Styx Nick Hicks. He's just going, oh, you see, kids, that's an acronym. You see, in the show business, that means
in
something.
America, we love a wet ass pussy.
Yeah. It's. I not even George M. Cohan. I can picture James Cagney being very angry at that. He strikes me.
Oh, you're thinking
me as a guy.
Irish American man might have issues with sexuality in media?
Yeah. So
you don't say.
Yeah. I'm just so you know, Doctor, I'm Irish, so he's allowed to insult me like that.
Fair. That's how that works.
And I'm Italian from New York, so it's like legally binding.
Yeah.
I have to shit off the Irish.
He's also like the most Irish guy who isn't at all Irish. I was in Dublin and just frequently texting him, going like, "This is your people." Like every pub I've been to, they've just been like, you've got to be careful on Friday nights. That's when the fights break out. I'm like, there's scheduled fights. There's 5 people have said Donnybrook here, Tom. You need to go. It calls
you know what's better than a scheduled fight? An unscheduled fight. That's all I have to say about that.
They have plenty of those. Don't you worry. But anyway, I was saying with regard to Yankee Doodle Dandy, when you go to New York City, they have that statue of George M. Cohan in Times Square. And it says like, author of some of the great American songs, Yankee Doodle Dandy, but then it has like Harrigan, That's Me. And I'm like, I don't think anyone's sung that tune in a while. There's a lot of them where you're like, again, Harrigan is also like a perfect example of a thing that this film touches on, but maybe doesn't get too into, which is like the rich early 20th century history of ethnic music, where you're like, this is one of the only ones that you could still sing in public, For sure. But
I really liked how the film portrayed that Harrigan song, because they sing it in full, as far as I believe, because it felt like it went on for like 7 minutes. And I was as uncomfortable watching it as the producers they were singing it to in the film. So like, I thought that was a real immersive element of the film. I was like, why is this still happening? It just kept going.
I'll say this, and this happened every time I watched this. Strangely, they don't perform the whole song.
No.
That brief blackface sequence seems like it goes on a long time when I'm watching it.
It does.
I'm like, we're doing this.
We're doing it.
We're really going for it.
For sure.
That's the blessing.
Where you don't need coffee in the morning.
You mentioned White Christmas is covered in your book.
It is.
I remember going to see White Christmas at a drive-in. It was like peak COVID. And there's that moment in White Christmas when they're doing the words, and they start a song going like, "Oh, we love a minstrel show. We all love them." And it was like, even though we were all on separate cars, you felt everybody white-knuckling it Because we're like, we're at a public drive-in in the middle of Brooklyn. This is being projected on like a factory wall, and everybody is just like, what is gonna happen? And then they come out and do a full minstrel show with zero blackface, and you go, this is good. Oh, they're still doing the voices.
They are doing the
voices.
This
is surreal.
And
they're
odd. Saying that song is so fascinating in that film because like White Christmas is a kind of reimagining of Holiday Inn, Irving Berlin's earlier kind of vehicle for White Christmas.
Yeah.
And that film has blackface in it.
Mm-hmm.
So this one's really... It's only about 13, 12 years later that White Christmas comes out, and they're singing this song about, oh, we love minstrel shows, aren't they great? But they don't verge into it. And that's at such an interesting historical moment in that early 1950s where we are making advancements on civil rights. And they can comfortably say in the film, like, we reminisce about the history and the culture of minstrel shows because that vaudeville tradition, like Yankee Doodle Dandy, like it's deeply American, right? And we can reminisce about it. We can have nostalgia for it, but we can't do it now because it's not now. It's something that we love about our history. And I find that really, really one of the most interesting parts of White Christmas, that it's showing that development over time of the social kind of tensions of civil rights.
And I'm not remembering fully because Holiday Inn is, I believe, the same year as Yankee Doodle Dandy. I think they are. So. They're in the same Oscars that year. And then you mentioned This Is the Army, which I know is not part of your book, but I have only seen that movie once. I'm pretty sure there's a minstrel number in that. I swear to God, there's a minstrel number in that.
I think there is. I think that's right. I haven't seen that in a long time. But,
and a not drag performance, but a cross-dressing performance as well in that film.
And also, Ronnie Riggs himself.
I didn't say it. I want to be clear, everybody. I was not the one who brought up Ronald Reagan first on this episode. He was going to come up because he has thoughts on Yankee Doodle Dandy that he expresses at points.
You just scream off, let's talk about Ronald Reagan energy.
I'm like, you can't avoid it, though,
not
right?
helping.
I did this on I was trying to decide what to wear, and normally I try and like theme my outfits. And I was thinking about it, and I was like, if we're going to be talking about extremely over-the-top American propaganda, and we're going to be talking about questionable racial politics, and we're going to be talking about really overinflating somebody's biography and doing things with their biography that didn't happen. What is the modern George M. Cohan more than a pro wrestler who claimed he auditioned for Metallica coming out to a song called I Am a Real American? What more can we do to express that?
Well, I know for a fact that he probably wouldn't have any issues with that minstrel show, brother.
Oh, he would not! We heard that tape.
Yeah, we heard that tape. Haunts my dreams.
Yeah, it's one of those things where you have this shirt and then that comes out and you go, do I keep this?
I think again, very surprised you have that shirt. But then again, I shouldn't. You're slowly becoming a Long Island dad. You're going to have questionable racial politics soon enough.
Jesus.
Oh boy. I think my favorite Hulk Hogan lie has to be he claimed he wrestled 400 days in the year because he flew across time zones so much that he added days to his calendar year. And it's just
that's
like,
how that
Hulk,
works.
Yeah.
Hulk, I wish I could love you, brother, because that is such an insane thing to say that I have to just give you some sort. That's like such carny nonsense that I want to like dap you up. But I can't like you, brother.
Yeah.
I don't like that tape, brother.
I take the point that in essence they are very similar, but I gotta make the case that Hulk Hogan and George M. Cohan did not have the same cultural footprint on America.
I mean, here's Dr. Joy. I would love to agree with you, right? I would love to agree with you. However, what I would remind everybody is if we turn around and go, well, because think about it. in this movie, we get to see George M. Cohan got to meet and got an award from the President of the United States. And Hulk Hogan, son of a bitch, he was at the...
Yeah, and also...
God damn. You don't want it to be true.
Yeah, and also...
But it's technically true.
Technically.
And also, both of these guys... Let's be real, Hulk Hogan also probably hated FDR.
I'm sure. I'm sure. Well, no, I feel like Hulk's one of those guys who's like, nah, he was good because it was long enough ago that he doesn't actually understand the politics.
Yeah,
which,
he has
by the
no
way,
idea.
I think he became too much of anything that is left is bad, and thus anything these guys tell me is bad. I just now agree with because I need to get paid for RNC conventions.
Though if we think about it, he probably would have liked Woodrow Wilson. Anyway, back to Yankee Doodle Dandy.
They share a vocabulary for sure.
Oh boy! I actually found out recently a weird Woodrow. So we've always one of the things you hear about a lot is like Woodrow Wilson screened "Birth of a Nation" at the White House.
Yeah.
But in the aftermath of the famous cinema at the White House being destroyed for totally normal reasons that everybody's cool with. Because of that, somebody was pointing out Birth of a Nation didn't screen in that room because when Woodrow Wilson wanted to screen that movie, they didn't have a screening room at the White House. He just had it projected onto a wall.
Right.
And it's like somehow...
Did they use a white sheet?
So I'm saying, it somehow makes it worse.
They probably had enough handy.
It makes it worse that Wilson was just like, I so need this here. I don't give a damn. Take the pictures off the wall. This is going to be like a college dorm room with a projector. Just throw it up there. It's insane.
You know what other old president Hulk probably didn't like?
We can't get into this.
He definitely didn't like Lyndon Johnson.
Well, okay.
Because you know what? Because you remember the famous quote in the court transcripts?
Yes. We're not doing this because I got momentarily excited that you were just going to at random go, you know what old president he didn't like? Benjamin Harrison, and then give no context, and we all just have to go, I guess.
Well, no, because this context is
James
better.
K. Polk. He did not care. He heard that They Might Be Giants song, and he said no. Tom, when was your first time seeing Yankee Doodle Dandy? I always
a few months ago. Okay. Preparing for watching the show, because it was, I knew of the song and I'd heard of the movie, but without any real context of what the movie was, just that it was a old musical. And as the journey of this show has shown to our listeners, I was not the biggest musical person for a long time. I'm getting better with that. So it was going to be a movie irregardless of the show or not, with my burgeoning musical tastes, I was going to get to. So I watched it, in lieu of the first scheduled time we were going to do this episode. Things fell apart, whatever. We got to this point now. I rewatched it again this morning, so I have a grand total of 2 times in 1 calendar year. But yeah, I mean, I think it does kind of go to show it's even if the cultural impact is maybe smaller than you would think, a movie about such an iconic storyteller of the early 19th century, 20th century, early 20th century.
Kind of both. Like he starts in the 18th.
Well, not early 19th century, but
no, not early 19th century. But it's
no, but a revolutionary figure in early 20th century stage musicals storytelling, and a big, sorry to spoil this, big Oscar player in its year. You do like that's the song has, more than Over There has lasted. This, Yankee Doodle Dandy is something that has sort of, you kind of can never escape. It's almost like the It Follows of musical numbers from the early 1900s. It just doesn't end. So yeah, like just the tangential knowledge of it, but still being able to go in blind of, oh, what is this? And then letting it just sort of happen, which is always my favorite experience with movies. It's just not knowing.
So I'll say I have had this film with me for a very long time. I kind of grew up with it in a way. It wasn't my first exposure to George M. Cohan either. When I was in the 6th grade, this is such a weird thing, and I can't imagine anybody doing it now, but when I was in the 6th grade, they would take us to like the local middle school to watch their theater productions. And for whatever bizarre reason, in like 2000, well, I guess not that bizarre. In 2001, they decided to do a middle school production of the stage musical George M., which is a different biographical telling of the life of George M. Cohan. Still had all the same songs, but it is not Yankee Doodle Dandy. They just took the same songs and wrote a new kind of show around it. My guess, looking back now, is that the school was just like, shit, 9/11 just happened. We got to put flags on everything.
Yeah.
What's a patriotic musical?
Yeah.
It's like this or Fiorello, I guess. I don't know.
Like 1976.
Yeah, I was 1776.
Not that'd be a weird one.
I got to be honest. I'd love if somebody did 1976 and it had the energy of 1776, but it's just everybody figuring out if they could get Jimmy Carter elected. I would watch.
I think that's
the
a
hell
hit,
out of
actually.
that.
I would watch the hell out of that for sure.
Is Ted Kennedy gonna run? I'd watch it. I'd be so in. In any event, Tom Eagleton did what? Anyway, I would watch it. But yeah,
isn't that just Nashville?
It kind of is Nashville, yes. But so I saw that, and I remember coming home and saying to my dad, like, "Hey, George M. Cohan," and my father goes, "Well, you've got to see Yankee Doodle Dandy." That's like, oh, and
you don't
James
know George
Cagney.
M. Cohan?
There's my buddy Dr. Joy. My cinephile origin story, as I've told in the show many times, and my dad actually actively hates when I bring this up. He listened to one episode of this show where I told this story, and he got mad. My origin story is I was probably about like 7 or 8 years old. The Animaniacs did like a little like skit where they went through a video store, and there's a line in a song. There was a sled named Rosebud and a citizen named Kane. And my dad and I, again, I'm like 7 or 8 years old. We're walking around a Walmart or something, and I go, "Dad, what's Rosebud and Citizen Kane?" And he turns to me in this exact tone and goes, "You've never seen Citizen Kane?" To which I often like to remark, "Well, no, I'm 7. Anything I watch is because you put a tape in the VCR.
You have shown me."
You would know.
Yeah.
Do you think there's ever a time when you're at work and my very tired mom is like, "You know what, son? Let's put away Days of Our Lives for today. I think it's time. I think it's time you learn about the horrors of American capitalism." You know
what, son? Let's watch The Passenger.
Truly, like, so that is that. So anyway,
I love Big Vic.
He said you have to see Yankee Doodle Dandy. We went to Blockbuster and rented the VHS tape. At this point, my understanding of James Cagney was much like most of America's at the time this movie came out, which is I'm like, well, James Cagney does gangster movies. Mm-hmm. James Cagney shoots guns and murders people and smashes a grapefruit into somebody's face. Like, that's James Cagney.
Which let's just say, hell yeah.
So I was like, what's this going to be? And I remember watching it. I was entranced by it. For 2 reasons. One, I loved tap dancing as a kid. I was obsessed with Gene Kelly and Fred Astaire, and so seeing the dancing in this was so incredible that I guarantee as a child I put my ankles at high risk trying to imitate his stair dance as often as possible. A very stupid thing to do on carpeted stairs, by the way.
I was worried. I was very worried for him. And also Cagney sprained his ankle twice preparing for this film. So it's real. It's real.
Yeah. And the other thing is this was also my first exposure to speak singing in a way. I just remember sitting there watching it and kind of turning to my parents and being like, he's not doing any notes. He's just stating the songs. Like because I had seen the musical where I had watched, I'm gonna have this poll, by the way, where I'd watched 12-year-old Greg Padden. I remember the kid who played the role. I watched 12-year-old Greg Padden sing all of these songs with all of these notes. And then I'm watching this Oscar-winning movie where James Cagney is just doing, "I'm a Yankee Doodle Dandy,"
Mhm.
Oh yeah, and it's very like Shatner doing Rocket Man, and I was just like, fascinated by this. And it just like I've seen this movie so many times in the years since. Anytime they usually run it on Turner Classic on 4th of July or Memorial Day or any of those days, and like a sucker, I usually put it on, and even at when things are the least optimistic, I still get a twinge when he's marching with the guys at the end. It still gets me a little bit.
This is an emotional movie. I
Yeah.
was shocked by how moved I was, especially when, spoiler alert, when his dad passes away.
Yes.
Oh my God, Niagara Falls, just
It's
weeping.
it is always a bad thing to see Walter Houston leave your movie. I'm just,
Yes.
it's always going to make you emotional because you go, well, I'm not getting any more of him.
Yeah.
That just seems wrong.
It's a real detriment to film, and they hurried up and ended this one shortly after.
It's also that thing of like you're right, because part of what makes that scene so emotional is that line where they say, it's you have a
I
theatrical era dying in there.
I said to my husband, we watched it together, and I said shortly before recording this that the thing that makes this movie like great for me, like it's a good movie all the way through, but the thing that makes it great is how you opened this. My mother thanks you, my father thanks you, my sister thanks you, and I thank you. When he says it to his father on his deathbed and then to FDR at the end. My God, that's how you make cinema. That is the heartstring right there.
Well, because it carries through not just the theme of the film on its surface, right? About like this history of vaudeville and how entertainment evolves, but also the undercurrent of this movie, which is like, hey, Americans today, understand that you are part of a continuum.
Exactly.
Right? Understand that when you go out and march and you are singing over there, decades before you, these other men sang over there, and decades before you this, and decades before you that. And I gotta tell you, like this time around, it really hit me, and I don't know why. I don't know what it is about planning one's own wedding that makes you hyper sensitive to being part of a continuum and accepting your own mortality and your place in the circle of life. I don't know. For whatever reason, this time especially, watching George's dad die and all that, and the evolution of the family was a real rough one this time around. Really, really got to me. This is gonna be. Yeah.
It's because you're weak. It's fine.
Yeah, I knew it was. I haven't seen it. You know what? We've talked so much about this film. We forgot to play a certain clip that we will play.
Damn,
now.
I was hoping we would do it again.
We're gonna break the record of how long it takes. So before we say any more about Yankee Doodle Dandy, let's hear what the Library of Congress had to say. Here's what the National Film Registry said about Yankee Doodle Dandy.
Yankee Doodle Dandy. Ostensibly a biopic about jingoistic songwriter-performer George M. Cohan, portrayed with buoyant enthusiasm by James Cagney, the film's patriotic message, celebratory musical numbers, and sentimental family saga were aimed at bolstering morale during the early months of World War II. Directed by Michael Curtis, best known for Swashbucklers, Cagney's performance was complemented by Walter Houston as his father, Rosemary DeCamp as his mother, real-life sister Jean Cagney as his sister, and Joan Leslie as his perky champion and wife.
That's what the National Film Registry had to say, but we should note this is not the only familial connection in this film. Not only that William Cagney, James Cagney's brother, was an associate producer on the film, but also, I don't know if either of you guys came across this, the Eddie Foy connection. Did either of you come across this in looking this up?
No.
So this is kind of fun. So Eddie Foy was a real vaudeville performer around the time of George M. Cohan. He appears in this film in a brief role, played by his actual son, Eddie Foy Jr. Eddie Foy Jr. would go on to be the narrator in a biopic about his dad and his family called Seven Little Foys, where Bob Hope plays the patriarch Foy. I'm sorry, Charlie Foy was the narrator in Seven Little Foys. I'm trying to keep. There were a lot of foys.
every-
Why did I say
every-
a lot?
every-
I just told you.
Every time you say it, it sounds like you're saying a slur of some sort.
Yeah.
It's such an insane like it's. I get that
Yeah.
it's a last name. 7 Little Foys. Like, what?
Yeah, it feels like one of those sheet music covers I'd see in the Ellis Island Museum and go, oh dear.
Are you also going to tell us he was also on Batman 66?
No. That's you know what? I'll since you're here, Dr. Joy, I'll spoil this for you. Maybe I'll beep it out for the listeners. But so you know, focusing on McCarthyism. So you know about the Army McCarthy hearings, right? You know about and you know about George Schein, the man that it was all fought over, right?
Mm-hmm.
He did a cameo on the Adam West Batman show.
Stop.
You can look this up as himself. Because they have him working at like a jewelry store that's supposed to be a ripoff of Tiffany's, and they just have him doing it because his last name is Shine.
Wonderful.
I played the clip for these guys on that episode without telling either of them where it was going, and the sheer bafflement on Tom's face when Adam West shows up is great.
Because I was just like, is it gonna be Batman? And the clip's playing. I'm like, it kind of looks like it, but I guess it just looks like any '60s like TV show. And then Batman just walks in. I'm like, well, there it is. Like, why wouldn't this guy be in Batman?
Is it Batman?
Listen, most of my life can be boiled down to: is this going to be Batman related, or is this not going to be Batman related?
Fair enough. All things are either Batman related or not.
Correct.
So, yeah,
it's not wrong. Yeah. I mean, yeah.
But no, there is a weird thing about this because this does it factors into a weird phenomenon that I'm fascinated with. It only happens rarely with movies, which is when somebody has played a famous historical figure once so successfully that they just call them back to do it again. So in the 7 Little Foys, which comes out like a decade after Yankee Doodle Dandy, there is one scene where Mr. Foy is going to meet with George M. Cohan, and they just get James Cagney to show up again as George M. Cohan for one scene. He is noticeably older, and they basically just have him do a dance-off with Bob Hope, which is a mean thing to do in that movie.
Yeah.
Because they have him doing the same choreography from this film. They play Yankee Doodle Dandy, and he's doing the same thing with the swinging arms, and then Bob Hope goes, let me show you how I do it. And it's a nice enough soft shoe. You know, I guess just mean to Bob Hope. But yeah, Cagney does reprise the role of George M. Cohan in a film called The 7 Little Foys.
What a delightful fact.
Yeah.
Please stop saying the name of that movie. I can't handle it.
Well, I was going to say, though, it's if our younger listeners are wondering what that must have been like, remember when they got the guy who played Biggie in Notorious to also play him in All Eyes on Me.
Well, see, that would be interesting.
This is kind of the turn of the sentence. Nobody saw All Eyes on Me.
All Eyes on Me is not a movie that existed. It didn't come out. It never. We're still waiting on it, just like we're still waiting on the release of Black Mass. Incredible that they let this guy make a movie about Bruce Springsteen without letting him release his Whitey Bulger movie, just still sitting on the shelf. When is it ever going to be released?
Yeah, and you know, thinking about that new Bruce Springsteen movie also shows us the rich legacy of Yankee Doodle Dandy, which is, hey, if you put songs that Dad remembers in a movie, you're pretty good.
Well, it does. This movie,
growing up, George M. Cohan had a hole in his floor.
He had a hole in his floor. Well, no, George M. Cohan didn't have a hole in his floor. Everything worked out just fine. He never had an issue, and then he died.
He did get the Excuse me, Tom. That is unfair.
I mean, come on. Let's be real about the movie here.
No. In what I'm sure is your favorite scene in the movie, because I know you, he does get the absolute hell beat out of him by a gang of child hoodlums.
Uh-huh.
Oh, well, absolutely. But more movie. What movie was it we talked about where I was just like, yeah, more movies need young hoodlums?
It was Mary Pickford's Poor Little Rich Girl.
Yes, we need
where
more
you were
hooligans.
Like, my favorite character is this child gang member who calls everyone sissies.
Yeah, well, listen, I'm a Class C cultural guy, so I know what we're... But no, listen, irregardless of that, this movie does do the thing, which I haven't seen the Springsteen movie yet, but I've been told it does this, which every music biopic does, which is just has a character be like, well, you ain't... In this movie, it's... well, we'd rather you be over here than over there. And he's like, yes, walks outside, hears music. Over there, over there. And it's like, God damn it. Bruce Springsteen needs to think about his entire life before he writes about Mansion on a Hill. I'm going to be so mad on Thursday when I see this movie. Mike, it really might be when you saw Les Miserables. No, was it Les Miserables or Into the Woods? Might have been both.
No, Into the Woods.
It was Into. He calls me, not even text me. He calls me. I'm driving home from work at like 10 o'clock at night. He calls me, and he is spitting mad that he just saw Into the Woods, and I'm like, okay, guy, relax.
Tom, that's an unfair characterization. I was mad that I saw most of Into the Woods because it's one of the only movies I left before it ended.
Bold. When did you leave?
It was basically, so I remember I stepped out because I had gotten a call, right? I'd gotten a call, so I was like, let me step out, take this. And it wasn't an emergency, it was fine. So then I looked down at my phone and go, geez, oh my God, there's still 30 minutes left of this thing. I got to go back in there for 30 more minutes. And then, like a revelation, like a religious awakening, something in my brain went, you don't have to go back in. And I've been such like a movie buff for so long, I've been such an obsessive that it did not occur to me that I could just leave. I've never done that. So I was just like, oh, I can just go.
Which is interesting because you didn't continue this revelation throughout your life, as you told me you had to finish Terrifier 2 days later because that's just how we're wired. And
it's because
I guess it's not as bad as Into the Woods.
No. Well, and also I'm sure Dr. Joy that you'll have to cover Terrifier 3 at some point when you do Christmas films of the 2020s, right?
Obviously, yeah.
Yeah, and by that point the director will have been sued by 7 more people, so it'll be great. It'll be
he's an Italian man from Staten Island. He might be in jail.
My fiance's from Staten Island, and I just turned around, was reading her the Variety story about the lawsuit last night at dinner, and I go, guess where? She goes, Staten Island.
She's one of the few people that was able to crawl out from under the garbage dump and get out of that burrow.
So Yankee Doodle Dandy. Now Tom is raising the point that like it doesn't, this movie, other than the death of his family is obviously a setback, but this movie doesn't even do
minor setback.
but what most music biopics do now, which is like they always have to have that like second act. Everything falls apart. My wife is leaving me because I focus too much on my music.
Well, he's got to have a hole in his floor.
Right. Which is not in the movie, and I really regret. I got invited to a screening that the screenwriter was doing a Q&A for, and I just I couldn't make it. I'm like, I want to be there because I just want to see how long before somebody asks about the hole in the floor line. Someone's gonna do it, and I want to be here for it. But there are no, he doesn't face those setbacks, and I think some of that does stem from like, we wanted this movie to be really optimistic the whole way through. We wanted this movie to be about the American dream.
Yeah.
And to a point where like, and I love this movie, you do question it as an audience member a bit when Cohan goes, at the end, he goes, a regular fella like me getting to talk to the man in charge. And I'm like, I mean, you were literally born into fame. You aren't a man on the street could not walk into FDR's office. We stopped letting people do that after somebody shot James Garfield. Like, you can't do that now.
I mean, you do kind of like have like a monopoly on Broadway at this point. So let's not act like you're just some schnook from Staten Island. That can. Yeah. I'm gonna just keep it on Staten Island. Well, no, they should never let anyone from Staten Island into the White House.
I think it's a good point that you were raising. And it is purely a mythology, right? Like, George M. Cohan's birthday was not July 4th, it was July 3rd. And he was like, but I'm a little patriot boy, and the first thing that ever was in my hand was an American flag. So it had to be July 4th, right? And like, I think the film kind of gets away with that a little bit because it is framed as him narrating his life. And he is a song and dance man. He has been writing American popular epics for decades by this point when he's talking to FDR. And I think that kind of absolves the film of historical inaccuracies about George M. Cohan because he's writing his own thing.
We also, I mean, listen, in the 40s, we did not care about historical inaccuracy.
Not at all. Not at all.
I love another movie that came out this year that we submitted to the registry and they actually listened, which is Pride of the Yankees. I love that movie to death. But that is a movie that sits down when it's writing a script and goes, so we have to make sure Lou Gehrig plays on the Yankees and we have to make sure he dies. And other than that, we can kind of just make this whatever we want to make it. We can have a scene that's like, well, Lou, he didn't know how to play the baseball. And then he pick up a stick, he hit a ball through the college window. Which is how his dad talks in that movie. Because I'm forgetting his name now, that one actor. You know that the one like Norwegian actor who they're like, you're going to be Newt Rockney's dad, you're going to be Lou Gehrig's dad, and you are going to be the owner of the general store in literally every Western we ever make. This is your
probably
job
know
forever.
who you're talking about.
You're
if
one.
you saw his
You're
face.
man. Yeah.
You absolutely know him, Tom.
Yeah, well, I mean, the amount of Westerns I watch, it's obscene. Yeah, no, I don't even think it's really historical inaccuracies. That's really what I've been making jokes about. It's literally the fact that there is no drama. Like there is no, every time there's like a setback, he's just like, no, that's not, I'm going to do this thing. And then it's just like, extra, George M. Cohan breaks records for doing this thing for the first time and is wildly successful. And he's just like, okay, cool. I gave the song I wrote to my wife, who was actually two different women in real life. But well,
Yes.
Again, who cares about historical inaccuracies? I gave it to another actress. Oh, it's okay, George. I knew you did that when you brought in flowers and candy. And he's just like, oh, what? Which he kind of almost exactly does without
he does.
He does. The fact that they even, unless I've in the 12 hours since I rewatched this movie, memory wiped this part. The fact that they just subtly slide in, oh man, his dad's dying, and now that his mom and his sister are dead, that's all of them. It's like, when the fuck did they die?
Yeah.
If it's so important to him that his family's dead, why are we just finding out about this now? There's 15 minutes left in this movie. He's got to play
killing
FDR.
Them off screen is crazy.
I was just like, am I losing my mind?
So like I think that the historical inaccuracies like do count though. Like they're building this mythology, right? And like American mythologies are really powerful. We have to build our own kind of stuff. And that like those elements like popularity, that play actually, like in the film they say that it flops and he's gonna write to the papers and say like, you're right, American public, I was wrong giving you slop and you shouldn't see my play and we're taking it off Broadway, like groveling to the American people. But luckily for him, the Lusitania sings. Yeah, so he doesn't have to apologize to the public. They'll forget that popularity was a play. That play in real life bombed in 1906, and the Lusitania was 1915. So like they definitely like apologized for his failure by covering it up with World War I, and that's interesting. Like, but it's also part of this kind of like building an American mythology around loving America and working for the American spirit and putting all of our values and successes into our public love for the country, its institutions, its culture, its values, all of those things.
And I think to that too, one of the things I think, and I've talked about this on this show and in other forms, and you see it in this film and you see it happen as time goes on, which is talking about American mythology, and you're saying this American myth making. It's also the people who, at what point somebody stops being a person and starts to become a piece of folklore. Like we have, other countries that are much older. They have actual mythological figures, right? They have actual, people who may have existed, right? But have for centuries been folklore, Roland and Charlemagne and King Arthur and all of these people. And we can kind of see that happen in real time. Not that we start imbuing magical powers on people, but the Baz Luhrmann Elvis movie, was one that I saw and I was like, oh, this has no interest in being a biography of Elvis. This is a movie using the American folklore character Elvis Presley, who just happens to have at one point been an actual guy that was alive. But by now, Elvis has become the same thing as like Windwagon Smith or Johnny Appleseed or these kind of turn of the century folklore figures. And
I think
that's an excellent point. Yeah.
I think honestly the more apt comparison, more so than Elvis, is Bob Dylan.
He's getting there, yeah.
Well, I think he's there. I mean, the fact that I'm Not There is a movie that's literally about the mythologization, just the way that man just like built up personas and changed personas and came up with these stories and would fuck with audiences, and like, you know, there's the motorcycle accident stuff that actually didn't even happen. What was it, 2 or 3 years ago? The Rolling Review documentary, quote unquote, documentary he did, where the whole thing is like he's got fake interviews and all. Like the fact that he personally shut up. The fact that he himself started doing it, and now people like I listened to his Screen Drafts Bob Dylan draft, and the way Bob Dylan fans talk about this guy, it is like they're talking about a mythological creature.
I hear you. The only counter I would say to that is there is absolutely Bob Dylan mythology, right? The one thing about Bob Dylan is, both because he's still alive and because he was such a countercultural figure, he has not gotten co-opted into Americana in the same way that somebody like an Elvis has or Jordan Cohan has, or like I think about like there's the, you know, that the Beatles, despite the fact that, you know, in their day the Beatles were not like were not, you know, overtly political pro Britain, in like the 2000s had just gotten fully co-opted into cool Britannia, right? Had gotten fully co-opted where, like, you know, they were being used in the Olympic opening ceremony about how great Britain is. And even the Sex Pistols, they played a bit of like Anarchy in the UK during the opening ceremony of the London Olympics. And you're like, well, this has lost its potency. I think there is absolutely a Dylan mythology, but I also think when Bob Dylan shuffles off this mortal coil and has been gone for a bit and can't speak for himself anymore, is he going to get the Woody Guthrie treatment where instead of us viewing Woody Guthrie as that's a man who said, screw the American system, like this is broken, but then by like the 80s, Reagan and all these other conservatives are going, and of course Woody Guthrie, who helped shape America and how it is today. And it's like, well, you're making him you're holding Woody Guthrie up alongside like the founding fathers, when in actuality Woody Guthrie was going, this thing's broken. The American dream is dead, you know?
I just think it's mainly because A Complete Unknown last year has a similar vibe.
Yeah.
Not real. I mean, in the sense that Dylan in that movie isn't a character. He has an idea, and he doesn't really have setbacks or emotional issues. It's just he's kind of just a guy that's there to ruin everybody else's day and to make Johnny Cash chuckle.
Yeah,
but he's just like the way Cohen is portrayed in this movie is having, anytime an issue comes up, he just says, "No, I'm going to just do it, and it's going to be great. You guys are wrong," and it's just he succeeds at everything he does. Where, like we were talking about, he's become a mythological figure. Dylan's treated like a mythological figure in that movie, and like I'm Not There was, here's the 7 different personas of Bob Dylan. That's kind of the most famous personas of Bob Dylan, which I would love a postscript now where they add another segment of the Bob Dylan that just does Frank Sinatra covers.
I mean, that's not that far off from the second half of the Christian Bale arc, where it's just Bob Dylan, the televangelist. But yeah, Dr. Joy, you looked like you wanted to say something. Yes.
Well, I find all of this fascinating, and I had a whole kind of side conversation in my head of like, does Springsteen fit into this? Because I think Springsteen does kind of fit into it.
Yeah, and Born in the USA definitely comes into play, especially with a topic like Yankee Doodle Dandy. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and I think in that same way of kind of being co-opted, as you're saying with Guthrie, by like the Reagan era, and conservative ideas that don't, or conservative like talking points that don't really understand the cultural critique in the cultural media that they are saying is like, oh, this is pro-America. And it's like, it is, but not the America you're talking about. Like, it's a different kind of very critical, patriotic idea of America. And I think that that's also in Yankee Doodle Dandy. And you can read it as like all rah-rah, celebratory American whatever of this period. And like, that is how it was made. It was part of this war effort when FDR is saying like, we need Hollywood to step in and tell Americans how to be Americans again. That film is part of the war effort, and a crucial one. In World War II, we have the Office of War Information that's headed by Elmer Davis. He was a CBS News journalist, and he has this phenomenal quote that the easiest way to inject a propaganda idea into most people's minds is to let it go in through the medium of an entertainment picture when they do not realize that they are being propagandized. And like, that's our starting point in like 42. So this film is definitely in that vein of like, here is the America and the spirit of America and the idea of America that you need to carry in your heart. Get these songs stuck in your head because you are a Yankee Doodle boy or girl, and go forth, my American child, right? But then it can also be co-opted in like a really dangerous way.
Well, I think that's so important because I think there's a line in this film that Cohan says that really sticks out to me when I watch it, in part because of where I'm at, which is when he says, it seems it always happens whenever we get too hi-hat and too sophisticated for flag waving, some thug nation decides we're pushover, all ready to be blackjacked. And it's not long before we're looking up mighty anxiously to be sure the flag's still waving over us. And I think, obviously, in this case, it's the context of foreign powers coming in, right? Mm-hmm. But I also think when you're listening to these actual songs, right, especially Yankee Doodle Dandy, things like that, it makes me think of, there's that warning that Abe Lincoln gave in the Lyceum Address, where he basically says, like, no foreign power is going to destroy America. We're going to destroy ourselves, if anything. Like, we're going to die by suicide. And I think that's
not relevant.
Well, that's right, but that's kind of the thing is like, I was listening to, I won't get too in the weeds of what I was, listening, but listening to this analysis talking about like one of the ways that you can kind of fail in America as a movement, particularly in a binary system, is to surrender the concept of America and patriotism to one side. Like that when you look at the successful populist figures, and I don't just mean populism in the kind of Jacksonian sense, but just like the people who are able to rally the country around them, whether that's FDR or Warren G. Harding or Ronald Reagan or Bill Clinton or Barack Obama, they were all people who ascended to power by waving the flag and going, I love this place. Don't you want to be proud of the place that you're in? Like, don't you want to be happy? Like, you see this cyclical thing in American politics time and time again, which is like there is a period where everybody, where, I mean, you can read it in not to get too into Richard Hofstadter's The Age of Reason, Pulitzer Prize history. Like, he kind of points out like this cyclical nature of like the American public will absolutely go through a period of strife and go through a period of, willing to like make sacrifices to change. But you got to follow that up with like, all right, let's party now. Yeah. Because as Obama just discussed on the last WTF, you can certainly annoy people into fascism. Yes. And that seems like something Cohen's talking about in this,
And talking about the co-opting stuff, it's it really does feel like the easiest thing. It just reminds me, I'm pretty sure it was Oscar Wilde who said it, that patriotism is the virtue of the vicious. And it seems like anything that has whether it's subtly critiquing or not, like Born in the USA is probably the most famous of our lifetimes of a movie
Yeah.
of a song that's talking about a Vietnam vet who lost everything, can't even get a job in his hometown, and he fought in a war that we lost for no reason. That just because it's jaunty and says "Born in the USA" in a very high energy way, that a very vicious subset of the country can just completely, even now, 40 years later, completely ignore the context of it. And it's a thing that uh I think it's the easiest thing for them to co-opt because they can't. It's a weird thing where you just see it. I joke about the Long Island connection with me and Mike, but different parts of the island we see it. There are when we see. I mean, I'm sure this is the same all over the country, but on Long Island, the kind of person you're about to see at the red light if you drive past their car and there's a flag on their rear view mirror, or they have just a flag attached to their car, and if you were to ever have to interact with that kind of person, that it's not going to be a particularly deep or pleasant conversation.
But I think that's kind of one of the things that Cohan's addressing in that line, or the film's addressing in his line, is like, do not surrender these symbols to cynicism. The same way that, like, you can absolutely 100% oppose in like the 1950s and 60s. You can absolutely oppose the way that this country treats people of color, and you can talk about that history. But if you don't do that while also kind of waving and saluting the flag, George Lincoln Rockwell is off to the side with his American Nazi Party. You can't let the American Nazi Party be the only party that gets to use the word American.
Or the flag.
Right.
The icons, the symbols, the Lincoln Memorial. Like, you can't see that.
That's what something like John F. Kennedy understood, right? Kennedy understood you can make the push for positive change a patriotic virtue, right? You can make the idea of fighting to make things better a patriotic virtue. Kennedy wins on a message of ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country, right? It was an optimistic vision. I go back when I'm talking popular, it's like, Bill Clinton's campaign song was "Don't Stop Thinking About Tomorrow." It wasn't "We're going to restore XYZ." It was like that building a better future is a patriotic virtue.
Yes.
And, I think that is an important message in this film.
And
I have... Sorry, go ahead.
No,
Tom.
please.
No, you go. You go.
I have so many things to say about these things. Like, I'm reeling, but I'll pare it down to two. One is about Frank Capra, the classic in this conversation. And the other is about the cinematographer for this film. Have either of you encountered the cinematographer of this one?
I do not have any notes on that, surprisingly. So please take it away.
So the director of photography is James Wong Howe.
Oh,
yes.
Okay.
Yeah, okay.
What a wonderful American story. To be making this one. And like that's what we can't cede, is that American story. So for others, James Wong Howe is an incredibly influential cinematographer in Hollywood history. He really pioneered low-key lighting and the use of shadows that later influenced film noir. And he made the crab dolly to move a camera around. Like, he is important in film history. He made over 130 films from like 1917 to 1975. He's all over 20th century Hollywood. And he's a Chinese American who was born in China in 1899. His dad comes over the same year to work on the Northern Pacific Railway and sends for his family to come over 5 years later in 1904. The family moves to Washington. They open a general store. little James gets a Brownie camera that gets him into cinema or into photography as a young child. Like, these are like just American beats in the early 20th century. And then he has a chance encounter making his way down the East Coast. He moves to Oregon, has a boxing career for a bit, goes down to San Francisco, moves to LA, has a chance encounter that gets him a job with Cecil B. DeMille. And DeMille launches his career in Hollywood. He meets his wife. They have to go to Paris to get married in 1937 because he is a Chinese American man and she was a white woman. So their marriage was illegal until 1948, or not officially recognized in the US. He doesn't get citizenship until 1943 when the Chinese Exclusion Act is repealed. Like, you can't get more American than a man coming over with his family, pursuing his dreams, making so many classic American films, including Yankee Doodle Dandy, with all of these propaganda elements in it. Like, that's the heart of what You Can't Cede, is our diversity. That like, that man is behind this camera. Brilliant, wonderful.
And it's also, I think to what you're pointing out, it's also a sign of like how sort of, I don't want to say how complicated America is, because that's the most passé thing in the world, right? But
it is. Be passé. Yeah, that's the other point that I was going to make with Capra. Be fucking corny.
Yeah.
Be cliche.
But
that's patriotism.
But also how complex it is in terms of like so many of these people that we're talking about, Frank Capra and Jimmy Stewart and all of that, when you look into it and you're like, well, those guys, they were great people and great patriots, and you're like, they were very conservative, right? But their idea of conservatism, right, is a different thing. We were talking about, because we had earlier this season, we spoke to the gentleman, the congressman who created the National Film Registry, who told us all of these stories about like hosting Jimmy Stewart and Burt Lancaster and all these people at his home to talk about film preservation, and that I think Jimmy Stewart had dinner with the Reagans and apparently told him, Ron's on board, Nancy's not, which was a cool thing to find out. But anyway, to hear about this, and it's like, right, trying to boil any part of America down to the good and the bad, or the good guys and the bad guys, it gets so much more complicated. I already mentioned the Venona Project, but even the thing that you're describing about the Chinese American Exclusion Act, right? If anybody gets a chance to go to the Ellis Island Museum, and you think you understand the complexities of American racism, and then you're looking, and there's a section in the Ellis Island Museum about anti-Asian sentiment, and you read there's a big poster there that says, these 3 trade and labor unions, right, are all getting together to chase the Asians out. And obviously, like, now with our understanding of alignments, you go, that seems surprising, right? Like, you maybe don't anticipate that, but like in, the 1930s, solidarity did not mean what we think it did. You research things like the Pullman strike, all of that. So, and I say that because the idea of America is complex. It's confusing, and you can't let somebody stake a single claim on what that is for good or ill.
Talking about complexity, I mean, the fact that this movie is essentially propaganda to get people hyped up and okay with running off to World War II, when World War II led to some, as me and Mike talked about off mic last week, how we just don't talk about the Japanese internment in this country, that we kind of had our own little, rounding up the people that we don't like situation in America. Italians were a part of that in a smaller segment, but we just don't talk. So you like talking about the complexity, getting people hyped up after World War I happening at the same time as the Spanish flu outbreak, going into the Prohibition era, then rolling right into the Great Depression, and trying to get people hyped up for World War II, a war that maybe the only war that needed to be fought other than the Civil War in this country's official history. Can't count American Revolution. But then you have what we did to the Japanese in there, and you have the nuclear arms race, which again, like Oppenheimer, which is what I loved about the movie, kind of had to do it because we couldn't let the Nazis get to it, but then we beat the Nazis before they got to it. So let's just try it out on the Japanese so we can tell everybody that we got it. And you go, well, that's okay, that's kind of bad. You know,
well, I mean,
there was like ostensibly on the face of it, the most necessary and moral war that America fought outside of the Civil War in the 20th, you know, was filled with so much complication and not a lot of great patriotic, you know, we feel great about ourselves stuff going on. And you know, the fact that this movie almost acts as sort of like, I don't know, a prequel or like a opening statement to the Five Came Back stuff of, you know, we're gonna have Capra and Houston and Ford and Weiler making propaganda films for the American army and the American public to garner up sympathy and all of that. And that you even think about these guys doing that to try to make America feel better about World War II, get the patriotism levels all rallied up. And then you think about what those guys went through and what they saw and how it so fundamentally changed what they were like as filmmakers, that even a movie as, which, you know, I watch it every year, so this is kind of out of my mind at this point, but if you don't watch it every year, you tend to forget that It's a Wonderful Life is a very dark fucking movie. And you don't even get to the Clarence stuff until there's like 30 minutes left. It's like an hour and a half.
It's an hour and 20 minutes in.
Of God just kicking the shit out of George Bailey. All of these guys, except for maybe John Huston, because he just seemed like an Ernest Hemingway-esque kind of like psychopath who just kept living his life as a maniac afterward. But all of these guys, like, they went to do a good and noble thing, and they came back being like, oh fuck, yeah, Jesus Christ, I don't know if I want to do that anymore. I don't know if I could be this guy anymore. Who is it? Who I always forget. Who was the one of the five that found that did the film of the concentration camp that found
George Stevens.
Stevens. I mean, look at that guy's career after, like, he found the goddamn concentration camps, and he was just like, oh my God, I got to make a movie about Montgomery Clift killing women.
yeah, and then make Shane. Sorry, were you going to say something, Dr.? Please.
Well, I just about It's a Wonderful Life. I hear you. It is a dark film. There's a lot of darkness in it, and a lot of cataloging for an audience who just lived through all of these things, the kind of horrors of early 20th century America with the Spanish influenza and the Great Depression and like rationing through the war. And the film is really like, on one hand, like, you are George Bailey to the audience. You are George Bailey, and you have been sacrificing for so long. We've asked so much of you, and thank you for your service is kind of that point of the film. And I really see the darkness in it, but I really appreciate it as a film that's tackling national trauma and turning it into something quite beautiful and optimistic. And he does have to use a supernatural element to get to that optimism and like thoughts for the future and things.
Yeah.
But like, to plug the book again, I really spend a lot of time with It's a Wonderful Life and thinking about that American root of hardship and getting through it. And when we need Capra-esque optimism and when we need something like The Best Years of Our Lives, that is realism and like, actually, it's really, really fucking hard to come back from war and just live your life again and assimilate back into culture, even only just a few years after you left. this is going to fundamentally change America. And I think the two of those films in conversation with each other as a double bill, even though it would be like 6 hours long, that would be forever. I think it's a really powerful moment in American cinema to say we have both realism and optimism here.
Oh, without a question. It wasn't to besmirch It's a Wonderful Life or anything. It's even like a guy that even after his shift, like he was always the most optimistic. You know, he had that Italian immigrant thing of like the American dream, everything's great, I believe in this, blah, blah, blah. But even he coming back, still being the most optimistic of those guys after the war, makes a movie that is tinged with a lot of darkness in a way that is surprising, even excluding the fact that it's Capra. Just in general, it's dark. Suicide, drug addiction, poverty, all sorts of stuff. And but I think it makes the optimism go down smoother because it's more clear-eyed. But just like that demarcation line of even guys that were trying to do something good for a moral war came back and saw such horrific, bleak thing. So the fact that this movie almost plays as like, since FDR is a character in the movie and he's telling him, hey, art's important, blah, 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 all of this, that, like we've been talking about the whole time, how this, Cohan, there's a little bit of the subversive quality to his lyricism and all the stuff we were talking about, just like that this almost now with the hindsight of the war, because we weren't, Pearl Harbor wasn't even bombed when, this is set, basically. It happened when the movie came out, obviously, but it's acting like a prequel in a way to the concerted media propaganda efforts of World War II and what those guys went through. And I think it's, with all that hindsight and what we've been talking about, looking at it like that, it's like they didn't really know what was going to happen, but being able to see it in the continuum, it does fit into what we saw happen.
And I think we also have to view, and I'll bring this whole plane in for landing. We won't keep you for 7 hours. I apologize. But we also have to view it in the continuum of FDR's policy agenda, which is, from FDR's point of view, World War II is only happening because Woodrow Wilson didn't get the League of Nations, right? And, well, not only, but, he's very big on the League of Nations would have saved everything, right? And FDR is also all about wanting to revitalize the legacy of Woodrow Wilson, who was a very unpopular person for a long period of time because Woodrow Wilson's second term went poorly. It was poorly received. And then on top of that, there was all kinds of speculation about his poor health, even though he insisted on running again. And then he gets replaced by Warren G. Harding, who promptly dies. So it's fun how that worked out. But you're seeing sort of, as opposed to It's a Wonderful Life, which is trying to provide, or, as one example, right, which is trying to address the trauma, the national trauma people went through and like provide a salve for it. What we're trying to do with Yankee Doodle Dandy is kind of go, let's recontextualize everything. Yeah. World War II was not a tragedy. It was, in fact, a point of pride for America. And the one thing I think about with that is it brings me back to, again, I brought up Barack Obama earlier because he was on Maron's podcast, but when you listen to his presidential memoir or anything, he talks about feeling like there were so many foreign interventions that maybe would have benefited us now in hindsight, like how he responded to Crimea, how he felt he responded to Syria, all of that, where he felt, I'm not saying it, this is just his idea of like, America was so weary from Iraq and Afghanistan that he was like, I can't do this because they are so weary. FDR found himself in a similar position when World War II is breaking out. He's basically asking America, hey, you know that thing that every one of you is pissed about? You know that thing that All Quiet on the Western Front is about how we shouldn't do that again? Let's do that again.
Yeah.
And he needs this propaganda vehicle to do that. And I think you're kind of seeing something truly remarkable if you think about like the national fatigue we have for things now. But to bring this plane in for a proper, unless you had something to add to that, actually, I don't want to.
I agree, and I think you're both totally right here that it's about recontextualizing things, and all of those horrors that It's a Wonderful Life will cover in the post-war, saying like, oh, the flu wasn't that bad, all of these things. This film is like, actually, it was dandy, wasn't it? And we had glitz and glamour and neon lights on Broadway, and isn't that wonderful? Hasn't the early 20th century been a little ball? And like, no, it has not. Even World War One is kind of like, let's go get them over there, and like becomes this really patriotic time, which definitely is not the kind of consensus in the cultural media that comes out of World War One. So we get this whole reframing of that early 20th century for that end, that propagandistic end during World War II. That I think you're right. It's absolutely necessary for that moment to get people on board with continuing to sacrifice. You're like right at the end of the Depression, and you're like, all right, no more food, but for a different reason. And it's like, what?
Which was the original pitch from the WPA, and they shot that down pretty quick. Those were going to be our version of Keep Calm and Carry On, and they were just like, maybe we scrap this.
Early
maybe a lady makes a muscle instead, you know?
Early 1900s, not great, wouldn't want to repeat. I'm so glad history is not a cycle and we're not about to go through the same exact things again.
I'm so glad that we're not doing all of the early 20th century.
Absolutely.
No, we don't want any repeats at all. And just one final thing before Mike brings the plane in with the Oscar stuff. Absolute spiritual connection between this and Singing in the Rain. Just
for sure.
The evolution of the media storytelling, definitely a connection there. But yeah,
absolutely. I think it's really fascinating to have Hollywood productions that are like, let's recap how the entertainment industry has been going for the last several decades. Like, those are great. Yeah. I'm always on board for a like retrospective on our own industry. Like, yeah.
So winding down as we always do, Tom, how do you think Yankee Doodle Dandy fared at the Academy Awards that year?
Well, gotta put it on Jump Street. Been doing some research. I know it got nominated for 8 Oscars. I know it won 3, but I don't know exactly everything. So I'm still gonna be doing some guessing here. I know it was nominated for picture. I'm going to have to assume director and actor. And now this is weird where like there's categories that existed then, they don't exist now. Or there's like, so I'll say cinematography, production design, either score or original song, whichever one it qualifies for, or whichever one existed back then. Editing. I don't know if I got to 8 at this point, but yeah.
Okay, so you're close. You're close, but you forgot one. You're going to be mad you missed one. So it was nominated for Best Picture alongside The 49th Parallel, The Magnificent Ambersons, The Pied Piper, The Pride of the Yankees, so yet another, patriotism one there, Random Harvest, The Talk of the Town, Wake Island, King's Row, bringing us back to Ronnie, King's Row, and the winner was Mrs. Miniver. It was also nominated for Best Director, which it lost to Mrs. Miniver. Best Actor for James Cagney, which it won. Best Supporting Actor for Walter Houston.
Oh, of course.
Who lost to, and this is a wild one, Van Heflin for the noir film Johnny Eager. Which, Johnny Eager is a picture you watch and go, no, it's shocking that was like not that it's bad, but it's just a thing that you look, it's genuinely like when you find out Kevin Kline won for a Fish Called Wanda. You're like, what do you mean? What do you mean? It was nominated for Original Motion Picture Story, which it lost to The 49th Parallel. Best Scoring of a Musical Picture, which it won. Best Sound Recording, which it won. And Best Film Editing, which it lost to Pride of the Yankees. Now, with the Oscar thing, the reason I brought up Reagan earlier is, and I have gone through several books. I was trying to source this because I know I read this anecdote, but there are so many goddamn Reagan books. Reagan believed not only that King's Row was his best performance, but he believed he could have gotten an Oscar nomination for it, but for the fact that Warner Brothers had both King's Row and Yankee Doodle Dandy, and they put most of their campaigning money behind getting Cagney Best Actor and Walter Huston a Supporting Actor nomination, and they didn't really put the same for-year consideration budget behind King's Row. But at some point, now obviously Reagan thought highly of James Cagney, spoke a memorial to him and everything, gave him an award, but at one point, that is something that President Reagan maintained is, had WB not also had Yankee Doodle Dandy, they would have gotten him an Oscar nomination for King's Row, which is, I'm sure one day future President Michael B. Jordan will say, if Warner Brothers hadn't put all their money behind One Battle After Another, I would have been nominated for Sinners. Maybe that's how it shakes out down the line. We know it's going to be when Dwayne becomes president and complains about the Smashing Machine not getting nominated. That's what's really going to happen. I think Ron, did Ron say that when okay, the government had their hands up his butt, puppeting him? Yeah. Oh.
I have made the comparison between Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson and Ronald Reagan. Like, it's like my soapbox. I appreciate that you just said that, because yes.
We could spend so much time on that. I will concede, when we had the congressman on who created the National Film Registry, because he's a lifelong film buff, Robert Mrazek. Now he writes novels, but he's a lifelong film buff. And I had to ask him, because I've always wanted to ask somebody this. I'm like, so you are a lifelong film fanatic, and you also spent many years in Congress. At any point in your life, at one day where you're just walking around Washington and went, is that the guy from fucking Santa Fe Trail? He runs things now? What do you mean? It's so weird. It's so bizarre. Yeah. And again, my fiance and I were watching something about Betty Ford the other day, as one does when you're falling, when you're getting old. And I just kept stressing every time Gerald Ford's on screen. I keep going, he was almost drafted to the NFL. And then he became president.
I learned that recently, actually, at a University of Michigan game, that I learned that he, instead of having Hail to the Chief play, had Hail to the Victors, the fight song for Michigan, which is a fucking crazy thing to do.
Are you a Michigander? Is that why you were at University of Michigan?
I am not. My stepson goes to University of Michigan.
Gotcha.
So we went to a game at the big house.
Okay, so settle down, Kyle. Settle down. You do not have another Michigander here. Just calm down. He'll take any extent.
I'm a Philadelphian.
Oh, okay.
Go blue. Go blue.
Okay.
Yes.
But
I am
Birds.
a Philadelphian at heart.
Sorry,
yeah. Go Birds. Go Phils.
We won't hold it against you.
Yeah.
So that is what we have to say about Yankee Doodle Dandy. But we have more to say about Selling Out Santa, Hollywood Christmas films in the Age of McCarthy, now available. Should I just say wherever books are sold? Is there specific places you want to direct people?
I sure hope so. It will be everywhere.
We'll have a link in the description, so if people want to go through that, they can do that. But.
Yeah, definitely available at Barnes & Noble and through Indie Pubs Books if you are looking for an indie bookseller, or abroad. They definitely ship abroad. So.
And I'll just say this. I'll fully cover this, folks. When you do go to purchase this book, and you should, pay the full price. Don't do the, this has been a nice guest. We've taken up a ton of their time. I say that because just yesterday a friend had a book come out, and I went to the bookstore to purchase it, and the person at the bookstore goes, "Oh, we got some over there. We have a discount rack if you want to pick it up over there." And I'm like, "That feels dirty. I know this person. I'm going to give them my full money."
I appreciate you saying that.
So, folks, when you pick up this book, pay the proper price. Buy it through whichever. I don't know. You let me know. Are there different places where there's better cuts? You just let us know. We'll slip it into the links. We'll let them know. I don't know how residuals work for this stuff. I don't.
Yeah, for sure.
I don't write books, but you let us know offline. We'll make sure we.
I will for
place,
sure.
Yeah.
I got you.
Dr. Vaughn Joy, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you.
Thank you.
This
so
was
much,
this
yeah.
was an absolute delight. We would love to talk to you again.
I would love to. I had so much fun. Thank you so much for having me and for allowing me to cold email you and say, I want to talk on your podcast.
That was, can I tell you, that was so exciting. Not the cold email. In both my day job and here, I get plenty of cold emails, but getting a cold email and finding out you aren't a crank it was so delightful.
I'm glad you think so.
It was so lovely. Compared to some of the others that roll in sometimes. Where you're like, how many times does this say Hitler in it? Okay, let's just report that to HR. Dr. Joy, thank you so much for joining us. We look forward to having you back. But everybody else, stick around. We'll be right back with our picks for the National Film Registry.
The National Film Registry isn't some fixed object, frozen in time. It's always growing, adding new titles every year. These annual selections are made by the National Film Preservation Board, with members like Martin Scorsese, Alfre Woodard, and Leonard Maltin, and representatives from organizations like the Academy, the DGA, and the AFI coming together to debate and decide. But they don't just pull titles out of thin air. They pull from the public, people like you and us, who can submit their nominations for the registry in a form on the Library of Congress's website. What we do, at the end of each episode, is have Mike and Tom pick films not yet in the registry that they feel should be, inspired by that day's topic. At the end of each season, those films will be formally submitted to the National Film Registry for consideration, on behalf of You're Missing Out. Here are today's picks.
Okay, so this one came to me pretty easily, mainly because this movie felt like such a progenitor for a lot of other movies. We referenced the Springsteen biopic in the episode, and there was the Bob Dylan movie last year, Bohemian Rhapsody a few years ago, Elton John had one, the music biopic. There's a very strong formula and a lot of elements that are shared throughout, especially the character hears something or sees something and it immediately sparks the creation of one of their most iconic songs, which is just stupid and not how music works. But it's a cinematic device that maybe starts here, or if it was earlier than this, who knows. But this is the first time on this show it showed up, the earliest it shows up. And I just find all of these movie biopics, musician biopics, just almost laughably funny at this point, but in a sad gallows humor way, because people like them, because critical thinking is gone in this country. So you just got to go to the movie that felt like it should have put 2 bullets in its head behind the barn, but these fucking movies are still alive and kicking. Walk Hard, the Dewey Cox story, absolutely has to be in the registry. It's one of the funniest movies of that decade. It came out, one of the funniest movies of all time. One of its top 5 spoof movies. It's up there with Blazing Saddles, Young Frankenstein, Black Dynamite. Just absolutely assassinating its genre that it's making fun of. There's a reason why every time these movies come out, people bring Walk Hard up, because everyone just goes, did we not learn the lesson 15 years ago? Like, what are we still doing here? How can people still enjoy these when they're not like changing things up the way Westerns had to after Blazing Saddles? That we're just doing the thing that it was making fun of 15 years ago. It's great. It's a classic. It's one of the funniest movies of all time. It's a cutting movie. It should have been a genre killer, but it's not. But we can't hold that against it. So I think there's a good 1-to-1 connection between Yankee Doodle Dandy and Walk Hard, the Dewey Cox story. So that's my pick, and I'm sticking with it.
One of the things we talked about with this is how enduring some of this music is, particularly, as Tom was discussing on the episode, the title song, Yankee Doodle Dandy. It's one of those songs, it's not just part of the American songbook, it's become part of the American cultural DNA. And there's another song from a couple decades later that occupies a similar space, but from an artist who did come up on this discussion, who had a very different view of the United States than George M. Cohan did. That song is This Land Is Your Land by Woody Guthrie. Woody Guthrie is another figure who has become a piece of American folklore, And Woody Guthrie's life was chronicled in a Hal Ashby biopic, a very good Hal Ashby biopic, called Bound for Glory from 1976. David Carradine plays Woody Guthrie in that. It is still akin to Yankee Doodle Dandy. It's a work of hagiography, right? And Bound for Glory is also a film that is both a biopic and an overtly political work, right? Except in this case, it is from a very anti-establishment and leftist standpoint, a very pro-union standpoint, very worker advocate standpoint. I think Bound for Glory is worth being in the registry, not just because Woody Guthrie is such a seismic figure in American culture, and there should be some representation of Woody Guthrie's work and Woody Guthrie's life in the registry, but also, quite frankly, because, Hal Ashby is one of these great filmmakers. I think so much of his work deserves a place in the registry. I think this film captures a tone and a time so remarkably well. I think it's an important work in the same way that something like Mattawan is an important work, right? Or in the sense that Harlan County, USA is an important work. There is also one other little thing for why I want Bound for Glory in the registry, and it's a very specific me thing. But if Bound for Glory got into the registry, it would mean that all 5 Best Picture nominees from the 49th Academy Awards would be in the National Film Registry. To date, for anyone who cares about this little bit of trivia, there is no Best Picture lineup where all of the films are in the registry. There are a handful where they're missing one. The 48th Academy Awards is missing Barry Lyndon. The 45th is missing The Emigrants. The 40th is missing Dr. Dolittle. But just listen to this goddamn Murderer's Row for the 49th. Rocky, All the President's Men, Network, Taxi Driver, Bound for Glory. 4 out of those 5 are already in the registry. And also, I think when you put all of those 5 films together, not that you would do a 5-film quintuple feature, but all 5 of those movies, when you put them back to back, really paint a portrait about where America was at a particular point of time and how it viewed itself. So for that reason and many more, Bound for Glory is my pick for the National Film Registry.
Next week,
Maureen Gosling joins us on the show to talk about Chulas Fronteras.
Les's films, he wasn't interested in. He was more interested in the feeling connection with people, in his viewers, to especially through the music. And he, like the Lightning Hopkins film, The Blues According to Lightning Hopkins, was made during the Civil Rights era. But there's no reference in time to what was going on.
You're Missing Out is a production of Neon Night Media. It's hosted by Mike Natale and Tom Lorenzo. The show is produced by Kyle Lampar and edited by Mike Natale and Kyle Lampar. More information about our hosts and guests are in the show notes. Thank you to Amanda Rush for our social media, and all of you for checking us out.
If you're listening right now or want to take the show on the go, every episode is available as an audio podcast. Follow You're Missing Out on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts. If you like what you hear, please leave a review and a rating. It helps folks find the show.
Want to watch the show or watch some of the films along with us? Great, that's why we're doing this. Don't leave us alone out here. Check out our YouTube channel. We've got video versions of every episode, uploads of some of the National Film Registry titles we're discussing, commentary tracks, and live streams. And once a month, I'll be uploading some content that's exclusive to the YouTube channel. So be sure to click subscribe and hit that little bell to be notified as soon as new stuff goes up. Because, let's be fucking real, I ain't sticking to a goddamn schedule.
So thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time.
And we'll see you next time.
And you'll see us next time, because we don't watch you, you're watching us.